Last night at the 4, what struck me at that Mass, which I would have written in my Mass journal, was from the end of the second reading. All belongs to you, and you to Christ. And I pondered over that I belong to Christ. And what does that mean? That's just food for thought. That's not my homily. My homily is going in a different direction, going on the gospel. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now, this gospel, quoting from the Old Testament, very often is used to justify vengeance. Saying, well, you took my tooth, I get to take your tooth. But the purpose of this law from Almighty God was not to say, if someone takes your tooth, you have a right to theirs. Rather, the law from God was to say, you don't have a right to anything more than the tooth. Because it was escalating violence that was the problem. You took my tooth, I'm going to take your whole face. That type of thing. So Almighty God said through Moses, no, you can't do that. Violence cannot escalate. You have no right to do that. But Jesus comes and says, if you're a follower of mine, if you're my disciple, then now you have heard an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but no longer even that. And what does he say? When someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other one as well. If anyone goes to law with you over your tunic, hand over your cloak as well. Should anyone press you into service for 1 mile, go for 2. Now, the initial sound of this makes it sound as if Jesus is saying, become a doormat to everyone around you. If they want something, just lie down and let them take it. But that's not the point at all. It's actually getting at a third way of dealing with things. What do I mean, a third way? Well, when we come across violence or some sort of problem in our lives, usually there is one of two different paths that we take. Fight or flight. So if someone comes against us, we could say, okay, I'm going to come back with you at violence. Or, oh, no, I'm too meek. I'm going to run away because I'm afraid. Jesus is saying there's a third way. There's a third way. And we see this in here. That is not an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but rather to reflect back the evil that is being done so that there can be conversion. What do I mean? If someone strikes you on the right cheek, now, in the ancient Jewish culture, they wouldn't have used their left hand for most things because that was the unclean hand. So they would have used the right hand. So if they're striking you on the right cheek, it means they're giving you a backhand, which is very derogatory. Very much towards a servant or a slave, someone beneath you. If you turn the other cheek, you're not allowing them to backhand you anymore. Now, they have to change their approach, and you're putting in their face, I'm not going to fight you, I'm not going to fly away, but can you see what you're doing? If someone goes to law with you over your tunic, give them your cloak as well. Strip naked. It's kind of like what St. Francis did all those years ago. Basically say, do you see what you're doing? You're going to law for my tunic. Seriously? Okay, well, if you want that, let's show you how far this is really going to go. What is this worth? And then if someone calls you into service for 1 mile, that would be a Roman soldier could pull someone for 1 mile's worth of work. You go with them too. Now, if you went 2 miles, that Roman soldier could get in trouble because they only had the right to go with you, to have you go 1 mile. And so what you're doing is you're putting in their face the evil that they're doing and reflecting it back in order that there might be a change. One of my favorite, more contemporary stories about how this was lived out was Desmond Tutu, the bishop in South Africa. Now, he was walking along on this very narrow wooden pathway with mud on either side. And so it was one of these things, if you came across another person coming the other way, you kind of had to scooch around like this in order to get past, because there wasn't enough room for 2 people to walk side by each, as they say. Excuse me. And so he came across, he was walking down, and there was this white supremacist racist who was walking towards him. And the white supremacist racist looks at him and says, "Get out of the way. I don't make way for apes." So Bishop Tutu steps into the mud, goes like this, and he says, "Well, I do." He didn't fight him. Nor did he cow down and say, "Oh, whatever you say, sir." But rather he reflected back the evil that was being done in order for the hope that he would see what he was doing and there would be conversion. Why? Why is this important? Jesus says then immediately following this, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. The way we love someone the most is when we act for their greatest good. And their greatest good is heaven. And so we reflect back on them the evil with the hope that there will be conversion, because the greatest evil is sin, where we turn away and reject Almighty God. And so this third way is a way of reflecting back and saying, "I do this because I love you. You are my enemy. You are persecuting me. I want your good. I want you not to stay in your sin, but to change, to be converted, to be healed." What does this look like practically? Because let's be honest, we don't have enemies on a regular basis that are coming out to get us, so to speak. But there are people in our lives. Maybe people at work who make our lives difficult. Maybe they're people in our family. Maybe it's ex-spouses. Whatever it may be. There are people in our lives who make things difficult for us, who we wouldn't necessarily call our enemy, but people that are difficult. How do we love them? It's kind of impossible when you think about it. Because God says, but He commands us to love our enemies. He says, "Pray for those who persecute you." You know, I've listened to this gospel a lot over the course of my life. And it was only a few years ago that I said, "Ooh, I should really be doing that, shouldn't I? Praying for those who persecute me." And so I made a conscious, concerted, consistent effort to pray for those who I struggled with, for those who were fighting me on different things. And when I did this, consistently praying different points throughout the day, every day, for people who I was struggling with, I noticed two things happen. First was the way that I thought about them changed. And that's huge. Instead of looking at them as an obstacle, looking at them as an enemy, looking at them as someone that I had to kind of get around or get through, I started to see the other person as a beloved child of God. Someone loved by God, made in His image and likeness. And it meant I had to change how I was thinking about them. Now, no longer did I look at them as an obstacle, but someone I needed to work with, to get into better relationship with. So that was the first thing that happened. The way I thought about the person changed. The second thing that happened was the relationship changed. Part of it, I'm sure, had to do with the way I was thinking about it, but I also think it was because of the prayer of God pouring out grace. And things changed so that there was then a healing in the relationship. You know, I've seen this work in my life over and over and over again. It works. It doesn't happen immediately. We can't say, well, I'm going to pray several times a day, every day for this person for a week, and then it's going to be fixed. Well, sometimes that happens, but more often than not, it takes more time. For me, most of the time, it takes weeks or months or even years. But every single time, it has worked. It has transformed that relationship. It has transformed me. It has helped me to do impossible things. To love my enemies. To love them. My sisters and brothers, God is calling us to something deep. Deeper than the rest of the world. He's calling us to something impossible. He's calling us to love our enemies. May we this day seek that third way, not fighting, not flying, but truly reaching out in love, praying for those who persecute us. And let us see how God will transform us and our relationships.